something different, a subject matter that most of us don't like to talk about. It's the last thing, in fact, that we talk about. And it becomes one of the last things that our relatives will be talking about concerning us. And the last thing that we talk about concerning many of our relatives are friends. But it is an important part of living and life. And the business is essential. It's an essential service for most of us here. With us today is Harry Brown, owner operator of Harry Brown Funeral Directors in North Jacksonville. How you doing, Harry?
I'm doing great, Fred. How about yourself?
I'm fine. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Your business is, as I said, one in which it is the last thing that people talk about, but it becomes one of the most important things that we will all have to do and have had to do. And you've been in that business for quite some time. Tell us a bit about your history in the business.
Well, that's amazing. My history go way back. You know, when we were the kids in high school, they dubbed me the grave digger because I used to work for Dallas Graham. You may know Dallas Graham.
Oh yeah.
He owned the funeral home here for a number of years. And I used to cut grass in the cemetery after school, believe it or not, and dug a lot of graves in my lifetime for Reverend Graham in Mount Olive Cemetery. Cemetery across the street from Hilltop.
Yes.
Yeah, and from there, I was kind of asked to answer the telephone at the funeral home. And many people may not believe this, but back in the day when the funeral homes was the first responders. You know, if you needed an ambulance, you wouldn't dial 911. We didn't have 911 back in those days. You call the funeral home, and the funeral home will send an ambulance to you and take you to the hospital or take you to your doctor's office or whatever. So I kind of graduated from the cemetery, maybe parallel working with the cemetery. I done the ambulance calls, I done the death calls. With the staff at Dallas Graham, I answered the phone on Sundays. And from there, I initially wanted to be a doctor, but that was so expensive. But this thing, I went on to school to become a nurse. Most people who know me know I'm a registered nurse. I've been a registered nurse for over 40 years.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm a registered nurse as well. I did most of my time at University Hospital and now Shands and Methodist. I used to flip flop back and forth. But this thing rekindled in me to be a funeral director again, and went back to school in 1980. Got my license, so I've been licensed as a funeral director since 1982.
Oh, okay.
And I've been in it for that number of times, always actively in it, right along with working as a nurse, as a funeral director. So some years ago, some ex-partners of mine, we opened up a funeral home on Sutel, Brown, Green, Fairland. You might remember that.
Yeah.
The partnership lasts for about 6 or 7 years, and we parted company. Mr. Green since then passed on. Mr. Fairland still has the place over there on Sutel. And of course, I brought the property here on Edgewood Avenue North, Edgewood Avenue West, where I am now.
Right.
And this used to be Mr. Holmes and West's old place, and Mr. Holmes was the last person here. So I've been here for the last 9 years, I believe, 8 or 9 years. So my tenure in funeral service is long, and I've been around, seemed like as long as the dinosaurs.
Well, just to touch on a bit of history there, the Dallas J. Graham was the senior pastor at the old Mount Airy Baptist Church on Myrtle Avenue, and his was a mammoth ministry.
Yes,
the Sundays at Mount Airy were legendary. You had to get there on time if you would not get a seat, if you got there at 11 o'clock, forget it. The Sunday schools were massive. Prior to that, I used to go to the Sunday schools with my grandfather, and they were equally massive and filled to the rafters. I mainly went to Sunday school so I could go to church, so that my grandfather could take me to dinner after church, which was right down the street. But he was unique in that he owned a funeral home, literally within a few blocks of the church. And it was ironic that he could bring you in and take you out. In one church, you never had to worry about going anywhere. But Dallas J. Graham was quite a figure in this community. Martin Luther King, I think, made one of the few appearances in Jacksonville at Mount Airy when few other pastors wanted to have Martin Luther King around, and he was able to make his appearance at that church. One of the little known Black history facts. So your history in it, is unique in that you're right. You, as a young man, as a high schooler, you were already interested in this business. What about it intrigued you? What about the business that intrigued you?
Well, I was born and raised on a small street in Jacksonville called Sycamore Street. It was a dead end street. And actually dead end right into the cemetery. So as a kid, I used to see the funerals coming. I used to get to the fence and peek through the crack holes in the fence, and I would see the cars coming in, and I would hear the people screaming and hollering in the cemeteries as their loved ones were being lowered down in the grave. Kind of captured my attention. And as I got a little older, I kind of went through a little hole we had in the cemetery fence where I used to cut across the cemetery. And I would stand there and I would watch that. So I said to my mother, one day I want to be one of these people, And it's always been a dream of mine. I had a brother that get killed in 1963 in an automobile accident. His name was Rufus. Rufus inspired me. He wanted to be a doctor, but Rufus was too young, come from the same background I did. He applied to get in the Air Force, and unfortunately, he graduated from Northwestern in 61. He was tragically killed in a car accident in 63, so that dream ended for him, And so I wanted to follow in his footsteps, but this dream came back to be this funeral director. So as I looked through the cemetery fence and I watched these services being carried on, that inspired me. So I came back full circle to it. And believe it or not, in 1982, I was an intern at this funeral home under Mr. Holmes and Mr. West. I never would have thought that one day that this funeral home was going to belong to me. I never would have thought Mr. Holmes and Mr. West would have parted ways, but they were together 31 years before they parted companies. So,
yeah. I mean, you're in a legendary location, Holmes and West. For many folks who don't know, Wendell Holmes, of course, was very, very steeped in civic activities in this community and served on the Duval County School Board for many years. Was one of the real champions in civil rights behind the scenes, financing a lot of activities that took place. And the funeral business was the bedrock there on Edgewood Avenue, which ironically is right around the corner from William Raines High School. So it was easy to get to, and again, just a place that you could meet outside of having a funeral. But he was just one of those bulwarks for the community. Tell us a bit about the business today. What is the business? Is it the same as when you joined it, when you formally got into it back in 82, as you mentioned, and what you thought about as a young man? What is the business, the business today?
This business has really evolved over time. And, in 1982, 83, 84, we didn't have the corporate giants, all the funeral homes in America was family owned and family operated.
Hmm.
And over time, maybe a couple of funeral homes will get together and merge, like a couple of funeral homes here. Let's go way back now to the Hodge Getting, not Hodge Getting, Hodge and Son merged with Grittis Griffin. They were a locally owned funeral home firm here. They kind of merged together. And then over time, corporate America came in and kind of brought as many of the locals out as they possibly could.
Right.
And they kept the owners on the payroll. So when sending their parents in the neighborhood, that it was still a family owned and operated business. But corporate America have changed the playing field in funeral service in America now. It's changed the way the local mom and pop operation like mine, for instance, operate. Because it's a lot of competition. You know, and when you don't have the multi-million-dollar budget to advertise, you just can't pull in that volume of customers like corporate America can.
Mm.
Corporate America has this place in American society and funeral service, but this funeral homes have always been a family owned and family operated entity, and it's always been neighborhood based. And for the most part, it still is. For me, it's what I do, you know. So I'm locally owned, I'm locally operated, and I still provide traditional services to the families that I serve. And of course, apart from a traditional services, we don't have the loyal base of customers we used to have because times have changed. For instance, if you bury mama and grandmama, you're probably going to bury brother and sister and so on. And
Right.
if you got married, you probably was going to use the same funeral home. It was for my family because Dallas Graham buried my brother who drowned in '52, and he buried my brother who got killed in the car wreck in '63. He buried my mother who died in 1970. But things were changing and evolving. So we don't have that loyal customer base. Everybody now is looking for the most economical place to shop. Corporate America is not that place because when you go there, you're going to find the price tags are pretty steep. You can still do business with the local funeral director and you can still accomplish what you want. And I'm seeing a lot of away from tradition. For instance, black people are not a nationality of people who like to cremate.
Mm.
We like to bury our people.
Right.
We're having more of us having to cremate primarily because economic times are difficult.
Right.
And it's just really, really difficult. Funerals are getting very expensive, very costly. The average funeral in this area might start around $8,000 or $9,000 and going up.
Why is it? Why does it? We see these advertisements and all the time now, particularly life insurance companies that are pushing this. But they push the fee of $8,000-9,000 and up for coverage. Why? What are we talking about that costs $8,000? Aside from, and this doesn't include the burial plot, does it?
No, it does not. It's because I'm glad you asked that question because here is uh, the anatomy of a funeral bill. You have the services that the funeral home provides, such as embalming,
Yeah.
such as viewing, sheltering the body, taking care of all the arrangements the family want, providing for transportation and filing the legal papers and necessary permits, et cetera, that the state requires. Those items are one thing on the bill, and then the merchandise such as the casket, the vault, or the mausoleum, if that's what you want. And then on the other side of the bill are the cash advance items that you get, programs and police escorts and graves and opening closing of graves and that kind of thing that typically you put on the bill to save the family the unnecessary running around.
Right.
So when you put all those components together, you're going to come out with a bigger funeral bill than you normally would if you ran around and did these things yourself.
Mm.
I would like to think that I'm one of the few funeral directors in town that still allow people to put those charges on the bill, as long as they got the funds to cover it, and then they don't have to do a whole lot of running around. Most funeral directors in this town now want the family to go out to the cemetery and let them take an assignment off their life insurance policy, and they handle that themselves and not get involved with that. So that 8 or 9, 10, sometimes upwards of $15,000 from the cemetery won't be added to our $8 or 9 thousand dollar funeral. That makes it really look inflated.
Explain that a bit, because that's what the first thing I would think about. If I've got a life insurance policy, I'm assuming one of the reasons why I have it is to cover funeral expenses and
Right.
leave my family something left over. But now, are you saying that easily 8,000 of that can be for the funeral itself, and then I gotta worry about how much the plot? I gotta deal with somebody different from the at the burial plot.
Yeah.
Out of are both of them making different pulls off of the insurance plan, assuming that one has one? Are both of them making different claims on the insurance plan, or what? How does that work?
Absolutely. You have this thing called an assignment. So you
Okay.
come to the funeral home, and whatever the funeral home charges are, you take an assignment off that policy for your fees.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the family go into the cemetery and handle their own thing, you take that same policy information to the cemetery and let them take an assignment off.
Now, so it's just a question of whether or not the family decides to do the plot separately, or whether they let the funeral director handle both.
Right. In the traditional sense of a funeral, the funeral director traditionally bring all these numbers together, put them on the bill, and take care of them, because hopefully it's enough insurance on the policy to cover all the components that put the funeral together.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, we're seeing more and more people who don't even carry insurance. That's really sad, because
Yeah.
in this region of the country, a funeral can easily be $8,000 or more. That's for the funeral. And then if you go to the cemetery, you might be looking at another $8,000 to $10,000 in cemetery merchandise. And
Cemetery merchandise, and that's assuming, and by that you mean whether you want to go on the ground or whether you want to go in a vault above ground.
that's right, mausoleums. And I'm glad we're having this conversation, because people don't get this. When you go to purchase a mausoleum, they usually have several tiers of it: 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 tiers of spaces, compartments.
Mm-hmm.
Each, the lowest level and the highest level, are generally the most inexpensive.
Mm.
And they tend to start somewhere around in the range of $3,000 to $5,000. And in that compartment, you have to have a tray for the casket in case it begins to leak over time. You have to have the opening and closing, just as if you were digging the grave. They have to put the inscription on the drawer, which says this is Harry Brown's spot, and when he lived and when he died, etc., etc. A mausoleum can cost upwards of $15,000 to $20,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, imagine that. If you got a $10,000 life insurance policy, you're in trouble. Because most of that's going to be consumed at the funeral. And Fred, I tell most of my families, I don't push merchandise. And the Federal Trade Commission don't want us to have families that think that because mama died or daddy died, they need to go in this because this casket going to protect more than that other casket.
Right.
They frown on that. $1,000 casket would do the same thing as a $20,000 casket. The difference would be $19,000 would be in your pocket or the funeral home pocket.
Mm.
So people don't look at it like that. They think they really have to take people out with a big bang. All you have to do is put your family away respectfully.
Right.
My rule of thumb is, if you live like a pauper, you shouldn't be buried like a king. And if you live like a king, you shouldn't be buried like a pauper. That's a good rule of thumb to go by. In my mind, $10,000 is enough money to spend on a funeral, or less.
If I might, given that,
Mm-hmm.
What kind of, again, looking at the business from your standpoint, what kind of profit margin then are you looking at, given all of the things that you have to do? What, not just you specifically, but for most, let's say, mom and pop funeral homes, the few that are still around, what kind of profit margin are you guys looking at?
Well, you're not going to get a big profit margin on funerals today because the merchandise is going up. We teeter and tettering on the verge of a war. What we're seeing today, I think we're heading to World War III. And look at gas already. 2 weeks ago, I paid like $3.19 a gallon. Today, I'm paying almost $5 a gallon for gas.
Right.
So when things just go up that tremendously overnight, your margin of profit is just snatched right up almost overnight because I could fill my car with about $35 2 weeks ago, and now it's costing me almost $100. How you gonna recapture that overnight? But typically, cremations are becoming more and more a thing of the future because funerals are getting really, really costly, really, really costly. So you can have a nice service, put your family member away real nice, and instead of going to the cemetery, you can just have them cremated. Cremation eliminates all that thousands of dollars you might be spending in the cemetery. But as a people, we don't like to cremate. We like to have a full service funeral. And in my mind, the poorer we are, the less money we have to put on the funeral. When we pass away, we just have to show out. We want all the long stretch limousines. We want all the fanfare that goes along with that. We don't want people to think that we so poor we can't put mama away like this. It really don't make sense. Put mama away.
In the cremation, the other thing that has to be is what kind of jar you're gonna have the remains put into, and that jar can be one obviously the family can have, or they can buy one, of course, from the director, because we see a lot of I am seeing a lot more crematory cremation commercials that are popping up on television now for well, quite frankly, at this point, for less than $1,000, but that even varies too. Now, which brings us to another thing: when you're talking about a cremation, are we talking about when we talk about the burn first, and then we're talking about where the remains are going to be? So, does the price that we're seeing include the burn, or is the burn separate from something, from putting it in the jar, so to speak?
That's a real interesting question you asked, because prior to a few years ago, funeral homes didn't even advertise prices, and now it seems to be a price war going on out here between funeral homes. A few years ago we saw the 1995 funeral, but you don't see that one too much, and now you're seeing the 29.95 funeral. And I venture to say what families actually get for that, because when people are going through an emotional thing, such as we go through when someone in the family passes away, they can easily be taken advantage of, because people really don't know, and especially if this is your first experience with death, and this is your first experience actually having to come in and sit down in front of the funeral director and put the funeral together, it can be a real culture shock. You come in here with $15,000 or $20,000 life insurance policy, you figure that's enough, and then when you leave the funeral home, you went, that don't include the cemetery, So let me tell you what I like to do for my families. Those who like to do the cremation thing, you can come in here. You can, we can pick your loved one up. We can embalm the body, fix them up nice, put them in a round casket, have their service in my chapel or your church or wherever you like to have it. And after that is over with, cremate, under $3,000. That's almost unheard of. That includes everything from picking the person up to returning the ashes back to the family. Yeah. See, now most funeral homes don't put that out there because that 29.95 funeral that I see some of my colleagues advertise. What you gonna do with the body after this $3,000 funeral?
Mm. Well, that's the thing. I mean, it as you said, when you are confronted with the death of a loved one or even a friend that you end up having to be in charge of the services, you take that to a professional like yourself, a funeral director, and you don't really think about it until they give you the bill of particulars and go through it.
Right.
And you know, instead you have to look at this. You do have to force yourself to look at this as the business end of that. You're not shaming your loved one by what you choose, but you're doing a service, generally, because once it's over and everybody goes back to the house or the chateau, wherever they go for the after funeral meal, that's when the oh my goodness moment starts to kick in.
Right.
And you realize how much it is there. So, I mean, I hate to go back to this profit thing, but we're in a capitalist society and I got to do it. So are you looking at, do you or others see very much more than, it sounds to me pretty well, more than a 20%, anything more than a 20% profit margin on the average funeral that you do? Let's say somebody comes to you and they want you to handle everything. Yeah. Out of that, are you looking at anything more than a 10 or 20% profit margin?
No, not really. And the profit margins come when people push the merchandise, because obviously if you're going to get a $6,000 casket, the margin of profit in that going to be a lot more than it would be on $1,000 casket, for instance. Mm-hmm. So the profit margin going to vary based on the type of service you're producing for the family.
Okay.
So I would. My philosophy is I'm doing okay. I'm not out here trying to take advantage of people. I'm not trying to get rich. And then what we're gonna do with all that money that we amass in the banks anyway after we die? Every millionaire went and left millions for somebody else to spend up. So you can rob families like taking from the poor and giving it to the rich. You can enlarge your borders, for lack of a better term, and you can get rich off a lot of poor people because they really don't know any better. And then at the end of your day, there's some things money can't buy. I thank God that I'm healthy at this age. I thank God I'm able to serve families at this age. I retired from the hospital and put about 28 years in the hospital. So I'm not out here trying to get rich. I'm trying to break even. I'm trying to be able to take care of myself and my family and the people that work with me. And that's really about it, Fred. I don't see myself amassing millions. And for me to do that, it's going to have to be a lot of people crying. It's going to have to be a lot of people digging in their pockets, Yeah. And let me say this to you. I want to go back to something you alluded to earlier. Everybody want these long stretch limousines. The average funeral home can't afford those cars, And for the ones who do have them, these cars cost a lot of money. A hearse, you might be looking almost at $300,000 for a new hearse. You might be looking at $250,000 or more for a nice long stretch limousine. How many can you afford? And here's another thing in our culture. Everybody wants to have the proverbial 11 a.m. funeral on Saturday morning.
Yes.
So if you come to Jacksonville and you find out if it's 25 different funeral homes in this town and everybody having a funeral, it's probably going to be 11 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning. We got this Saturday morning thing about us,
Yeah.
We want to wait till everybody can be there. So if one funeral home got 5 funerals and all of them at 11 o'clock, where they going to get all those vehicles from to serve those 5 families? People don't think you got to beg, borrow, pull from everywhere you can to produce those services, and it costs money. That's another reason why things tend to go up, because you can you can do everything you can do to try to save somebody some money, but because everybody want a funeral at the same time on a particular day, Saturday morning specifically, you got to pull in all these resources.
Yeah. Yeah, we're at the point where you got to book. You have to book your time. You got to book your time at the church with the pastor, his time, all of the arrangements there. And Jewish families have even a tighter time. Jewish Muslim families have a tighter time frame in which they have to do things that doesn't extend over a week like many of us Baptists and Methodists do. We extend it over a week and a half till we are sure that everybody's going to be in town, and those limousines have to be it can be leased now, because you're right. Everybody can't afford to have the car sitting up there 5 days a week, and then finally on Saturday, Friday, and Saturday they all in business. So you're leasing a lot of that stuff. And we won't even mention the horse-drawn carriages.
Right. That's another thing. We don't have those in town. We have to pull them from out of town somewhere.
I can imagine. I can imagine. That's a whole different thing, and I'm seeing those. I see it every so often. I really try not to go out and about before until between 11 and 1, or I try to get gone out of the neighborhood before 11 and 1 o'clock, so I don't get stuck at the intersection with a funeral cortege. Even though I know they may have to do the same thing for me one day.
That's true. Well, let me tell you, here's the thing for me. If you're serving 5 families, and that's very possible, 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning, where are you going to get all that equipment from?
Yeah.
Then when you pull up in front of somebody's house in the old Jalabby, they don't like that. They want these nice, long, clean, beautiful cars. They saw somebody went, where is that car? I saw. Where is that hearse? I saw. So when you got to stretch yourself, and I don't know why. I don't know why we want to just be so celebratory with that. You have to understand that I'm serving you and 4 or 5 more other families, and my resources are right here. So what I do, I go out and buy 5 brand new limousines and 5 brand new hearses just for them to sit there at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning.
Yeah, it just doesn't make economic sense.
No. So what you going to do? So you have to just, I rent my cars from people who in the business to do that. Then my family save a lot of money because I don't have the day-to-day care of that particular vehicle.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean that's it. I mean, that's what you're looking at. And of course, with this business is for the living.
Right.
It is not for the dead.
Right. Absolutely.
This is what we want. This is how we want things to do. Right. Even if the person told us ahead of time what they'd like to have, in the end, this is what the living wants to do. Right. This is their celebration of it. And whether they want to look, some don't want to look bad. Others just want to make sure they had it. And of course, money dictates all in our society.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that brings me to this, because it's been said that women don't dress for men. They dress for other women. They want to impress. They want to impress the other women. How well they look. They're not really. They want to be approved by the man, but they really dress so other women can look at them.
Yeah.
So we have these funerals, in my mind, I believe, just to impress people about how well we can show off, because if we really stop to think about it, this I had a friend that I grew up with. He said, hey, all of us gonna go to hell when we die, because God done already got that 144,000 he talked about. He said, so when I die, y'all can just throw me in the ditch somewhere. I don't care nothing about it.
I won't know.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. The funeral is not for the dead person. It's for the living. It's people. The person in the casket can care less about what he's in. He doesn't know anything about that. It's not furnace for us. We want to impress people with how well we can do a thing, and it can cost you to show out. My mama used to tell me, son, it costs you to be a big shot. She said, stay within your means. And I adopted that philosophy. That's why I can tell you $1,000 casket can do the same thing a $20,000 casket can do. The difference is $19,000 can be in your pocket or $19,000 can be in my pocket.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
See,
Amen.
people need to get that.
Amen. Harry Brown,
Yeah,
funeral
bro.
director of
Yes.
and owner proprietor of Harry Brown Funeral Directors in Jacksonville, Florida. Harry, you have lived up to everything that I thought this conversation would be.
Thank you.
It's a conversation that needs to be had and one that very few people talk about. And I knew that you would do that quite well. We will have this again because there's a couple other things I'd like to touch on, but I appreciate you being with us today, Harry.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you for having me.
All right.
God bless you.